The screaming began before dawn. Not human screaming, something lower, rawer, animal in its despair. By the time the doctor's carriage crested the frost, slick road, the sound had already faded into the trees, leaving only the echo of it in the frozen air. The house at the end of the valley was lit from within, its windows glowing like open wounds against the dark. Inside, the walls were streaked with blood that had no single source. The midwife had fled hours before, muttering that the child was not meant for daylight. On the floor beside the hearth lay the mother, eyes wide, unblinking, her breath shallow and broken. In her arms, something moved, small, silent, and watching. The firelight caught its skin, and the doctor thought, for an instant, that he could see the veins pulsing beneath the surface like roots beneath glass. He stepped closer, and the baby turned its head toward him with a movement too precise for a newborn. Its eyes were black, not dark brown, not shadowed, black, complete and reflecting nothing. The room smelled of iron and candle wax. Outside, the wind shifted through the bare sycamores, carrying the valley's secret into the hills. No one who lived there ever forgot that night. No one who heard that sound ever slept right again. And yet, within the next day, the story was buried. The house was sealed, the doctor paid, the records destroyed. Only one question remained, whispered by the few who had glimpsed what was born in that room. How many centuries of blood had led to this? Which city are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Because somewhere, as you read this, the same valley still exists, hidden under another name on old maps, its boundaries blurred by age and deliberate erasure. Those who try to find it say their compasses falter, their watches stop. Their sense of direction folds in on itself. It's a place where the air feels too thick to breathe, and every sound carries as if through water. The family that lived there had once been among the first settlers, proud and isolated. They brought their own stone for the foundations, their own servants, their own graves. The earliest deeds list their name beside the year 1699, the ink so faded it looks like bruising on parchment. They were not like the others, who came seeking freedom or fortune. They came to preserve something older, a purity of blood that, even then, was already rotting from within. The locals would later say that every child born in that family carried a piece of the valley inside them, a mark that deepened with each generation, until it no longer looked human at all. Long before the name Ashworth Hollow was whispered, the valley had another name, a name erased from the county archives sometime after 1872. The oldest surviving map, drawn in ochre ink on lambskin, labels it simply the settlement, and beneath that, in fainter letters, prohibited after dusk. The land lies between two ridges that meet like clasped hands, cutting off the sun by early afternoon. In winter, it never fully warms. Travelers once spoke of an odor there, something faintly metallic, as if the soil itself bled. The Ashworths came to this valley in 1698. Cornelius Ashworth, a man of stern theology and strange ambition, purchased the entire tract from the colonial governor for a sum that even then was considered excessive. He brought with him 21 family members, brothers, sisters, nieces, cousins, and a single wagon filled with books bound in human leather, their spines etched with Latin prayers and anatomical sketches. They built their house from the valley's own black stone, sealing each foundation with a mixture of ash, honey, and blood. No one who met Cornelius ever forgot his eyes, pale, almost colorless, or his insistence that blood remembers. He forbade his children from marrying outsiders. "Our flesh," he said, "is a covenant with the old world, Dilute it, and God will forget us. For decades, the family obeyed without question. The valley grew quiet, self-contained. By the Revolution, few even recalled there were Ashworths living there. But the journals tell another story. The few that survived fires, floods, and deliberate destruction speak of rituals held beneath the cellar floor. Marriages announced not in churches but in locked rooms. Babies baptized in something thicker than water. And always, the same refrain, keep it pure, keep it ours. By 1820, the valley had swallowed its own sound. No church bells, no livestock calls, just the low wind that never seemed to stop moving through the dead trees. Those who lived beyond the ridge said they could sometimes hear faint singing on winter nights. Hymns twisted out of shape, sung in a language no longer spoken. The inbreeding was not accidental, it was doctrine. Each generation recorded the results in ledgers that looked more like laboratory notes than family records. Eye colors noted, bone structure described, temperament observed. Those who resembled the patriarch most closely were chosen to marry their own kin. Those born too different were said to return to the soil. The valley itself seemed to respond. Crops grew without seed. Animals were born with double pupils. The air shimmered with an unseen vibration that made outsiders dizzy. By the late 1800s, there were rumors of a sickness, not plague, not cholera, but something older. The skin of certain children glowed faintly in moonlight. Their eyes reflected candlelight, even when the flame was behind them. The local doctor, a man named Elwood Crane, made 2 visits before refusing to return. In his final letter, he wrote only 6 words, "They do not die like us." And then, in the winter of 1903, a new child was born. The last before the valley's silence became permanent. The birth took place on a night without wind. The midwife, an old woman from the next county, arrived shivering though the fire was high. The mother, Helena Ashworth, had been in labor for nearly 20 hours, her skin slick and colorless. The father, her uncle by blood, her husband by law, paced the floor in slow, mechanical circles, his boots leaving black prints in the straw. No prayers were spoken. No one dared. When the child finally came, it did not cry. It exhaled only once, a long, deliberate sound that made the midwife's hands tremble. The umbilical cord pulsed for several minutes after being cut, as if unwilling to surrender its claim. The infant's skin was translucent, veins glowing faintly beneath the surface. The eyes opened immediately, black, bottomless, aware. The midwife swore that the baby looked at her, truly looked. Not with the blank innocence of a newborn, but with the steady recognition of an adult. She dropped her scissors and whispered the Lord's Prayer. Though she could not remember the words halfway through, Helena took the child in silence. Her husband smiled without blinking. The baby's first months were marked by an unnatural quiet. He slept rarely, fed rarely, but never grew weak. His heartbeat was irregular, sometimes racing, sometimes pausing for minutes. But the family doctor, a relative himself, assured them this was the rhythm of divine blood. When the child was 5 months old, he began to hum. Not babble, hum. A low, resonant tone that made the oil lamps flicker. By his 2nd year, he could walk, though his gait was wrong. Too fluid, too controlled. He preferred to move barefoot, dragging his fingers along the walls, as if reading something written there. At night, servants said they found him standing in the garden, staring toward the mountains where the moon disappeared. The family forbade them from speaking of it. Those who did were dismissed. The valley, too, began to change. Birds stopped nesting near the house. The stream that once ran clear turned black and viscous. A mist hung over the estate even on warm mornings, carrying a faint hum that matched the child's own. The livestock gave birth to stillborn offspring with features that defied anatomy. The journals from that period described the boy as the completion. He had been named Cornelius III, after the patriarch, though Helena sometimes called him my beginning. She believed him to be the perfected form of their centuries-long covenant, a bridge between flesh and something higher. But as the child grew, so did the unease among those who cared for him. He never cried, never laughed, never spoke. He only watched. When servants entered his room, he would tilt his head in unison with their every movement, as though predicting them. One maid swore that, when she dropped a tray, he smiled before it fell. By his 5th year, every mirror in the house had been removed, not by accident. The boy's reflection did not follow him exactly. The first to notice the mirrors was Helena's sister, Ruth, who was also the boy's grandmother. She had seen him pass before a gilded frame one afternoon, sunlight thin and grey through the lace curtains. His reflection turned its head after him, a half-second delayed, as though the glass had not yet decided what it wished to show. She told Helena in whispers, her voice breaking with the tremor of memory, but Helena only smiled and said, "He is closer to the source than we are." Within the week, every mirror was gone. Windows were draped in thick curtains. Polished metal was forbidden. The boy began to wander the halls by touch, tracing the wood grain as though reading some secret written in the walls. Sometimes he stopped in the middle of a room and pressed his ear to the floorboards, listening. Servants swore they could hear faint tapping beneath the house in answer to his silence. The valley darkened in those years. Fog became a permanent inhabitant, clinging to the trees even at noon. Travelers who strayed near the estate spoke of a low hum that vibrated through the air, an unnatural resonance that made their teeth ache. The townspeople avoided the road entirely. They said the Ashworth land had gone hollow, that the soil no longer took seed, that even the worms had fled. Helena, once pale and elegant, grew sickly but radiant, her eyes fevered with a mother's devotion. She recorded every detail in her journals, the boy's strength, his refusal to eat, his strange awareness of storms before they formed. She wrote that he would stand in the attic at dusk, murmuring in a cadence that wasn't language yet made the floor tremble. But not all were blind to fear. The family's physician, Dr. Marcus Webb, a cousin through 3 tangled branches, began to keep private notes of his own. He documented the boy's unnatural anatomy: bones too dense, heartbeat irregular yet powerful, pupils contracting even in darkness. His final entry ends abruptly. The child hears what is thought but not spoken. He vanished a month later. Helena told the servants he had taken ill and returned to the city. But his horse was found days later, wandering the road with its reins torn free and its eyes clouded white. The child continued to grow. By his 7th year, his voice had deepened into something that sounded less human than elemental. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. A visiting relative described hearing him whisper to an empty corner of the room, then watching the candle flame bend toward his face, as if listening. At night, faint light seeped from beneath his bedroom door, pulsing like a heartbeat. The servants refused to go upstairs after dark. Those who stayed reported dreams of enormous figures watching from beneath the floor, breathing in unison with the house. Helena began to believe the family's generations of devotion had finally been rewarded, that Cornelius was not merely a child, but the vessel of all that had been promised since 1698. She began arranging the old symbols on the walls again. Triangles interlocked with circles. The same sigils her ancestors had carved beneath the foundation stones. The valley answered. The night the valley answered, no one slept. The fog had come earlier than usual. Curling through the orchard and pressing against the windows like something alive. Helena sat by the boy's bed, her hands folded around a small iron key, the last heirloom of the first Cornelius, said to unlock the archive beneath the roots. The boy's eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, pupils vast and lightless. At midnight, the earth moved, not violently, but with a slow, deep shudder, as though something massive beneath the ground had turned in its sleep. The walls groaned. Dust fell in silent streams. From the forest came a sound that could not have been made by wind. Too steady, too deliberate, like breath dragged through 1,000 hollow reeds. Helena took the key and led her son down the cellar stairs. The air was colder there, older. A corridor extended beyond the stone wall, though no such passage had ever existed. She did not question it. She lit a single candle and stepped inside. The corridor sloped downward, carved through earth and bone, colored rock. Every few paces she saw carvings, faces, hundreds of them, worn smooth with time. They seemed to watch her as she passed. The boy walked behind her barefoot, humming softly. The candle's flame bent toward him. After what felt like hours, they reached a door. Iron, immense, marked with the same sigils that lined the family's crest. The key fit perfectly. When Helena turned it, the hum ceased. The door opened inward. Beyond was a vast chamber lit by no flame. The air itself glowed faintly, as if filled with trapped lightning. The floor was made of overlapping rings of stone, each etched with names, generations of Ashworths, going back further than any record. In the center stood a basin carved from black marble, filled not with water, but something thicker, darker. It rippled. Though the air was still, Helena fell to her knees. She understood. This was the source, the root. Her ancestors had served, the God they had promised themselves to through blood and union. She lifted her son and set him beside the basin. He placed his hand upon the surface. It stilled instantly. A voice rose, not from the air, but from within the stone. It was not language, but Helena understood every word. The flesh is ready. She smiled through tears. The boy turned to her then, his expression serene, his eyes reflecting the faint glow of the chamber. For the first time, he spoke in full, clear words. You were only the gate. The basin erupted. The liquid surged upward, enveloping him in silence, swallowing the light. Helena reached for him, but her fingers met only air. The ground trembled once more, then went still. The hum was gone. The chamber darkened. When the servants found the cellar the next morning, it ended in a blank wall of stone. No door, no passage, no trace of where it might have led. Helena was gone. So was the boy. The estate stood empty for years. The family line withered soon after, childless and haunted. Those who dared trespass spoke of a low vibration beneath the earth, like something breathing slowly in the dark. And when the mist thickened in the valley, they said you could hear a faint humming. A child's tune, steady and calm, echoing from nowhere and everywhere at once. The Ashworth blood never ended. It merely went deeper. Decades passed. The house decayed in silence, its roof collapsing inward like a mouth closing over its own secret. Ivy consumed the walls. Rain found its way through the broken glass and gathered in the cellar, though no one remembered that the cellar ever ran so deep. The villagers avoided the valley entirely. Animals refused to graze near the boundary fence, and their bones, when found, showed signs of rot without time. The Ashworth name faded from records, then from rumor. Only a handful of documents remained: letters, sketches, the physician's notes, kept locked away in the county archives under a title no one used anymore: Case Study. The Hollow Lineage. But there were stories. They said that sometimes, on windless nights, travelers saw a light moving beneath the soil, as if a lantern were being carried through the roots. Farmers spoke of a soft vibration rising through their boots when they crossed the old road. And in 1912, when a new surveyor tried to map the valley, his instruments failed. Compasses spun, ink froze mid-flow. His final note in the ledger read, "It hums when you stand still long enough." By 1958, what remained of the estate was purchased by a mining company. They intended to dig beneath the valley for coal. The first team descended only once. Their journal, recovered from the site, described a cavern of unnatural geometry, smooth walls that reflected light from no discernible source, and the sound, an omnipresent resonance that grew louder as they approached what appeared to be a vast, circular depression filled with a viscous black substance. One worker, Thomas Yates, recorded hearing a child's voice ask, "Do you remember your blood?" When the foreman tried to leave, he found the tunnel had sealed itself. The rescue teams found no bodies, only helmets laid in perfect circles on the chamber floor. The company sealed the shaft, and the land was condemned. Yet the hum continued. Locals claim the valley still breathes. On nights when the mist rolls low, if you place your ear to the earth, you can hear a rhythm, slow, patient, and almost human. It has been measured at 72 beats per minute, the pulse of a living body. Scientists blame underground water movement. Priests refuse to speak of it, and every few generations, a child is born nearby, eyes black as oil, skin pale as salt, veins faintly glowing beneath the surface. They never stay. They disappear before their 5th year, leaving only silence where their laughter once was. Some say they are drawn back to the root. Others whisper that the root is not buried at all, but awake now, learning to walk. In the records of the Ashworth family, one line appears again and again, written in different hands across centuries. Even in Helena's final, blood-smeared journal, "We were not meant to ascend, we were meant to return." And so the valley waits, breathing beneath the soil, patient and eternal, until the blood calls itself home again. The valley has long since vanished from maps. Its name, once written in township ledgers and family deeds, was erased after the floods of 1983. Roads shifted. Boundaries changed. The government called it natural reclamation. But those who lived near the old Ashworth lands know better, because the mist never lifted. It thickened. Satellite images show nothing unusual, just a shallow depression swallowed by forest. But when surveyed with sound equipment, a faint frequency hums beneath the static. Too precise to be random, too measured to be geological. It pulses in intervals that match a human heartbeat. One researcher, Dr. Eleanor Greaves, recorded 37 hours of sub-audible vibration from the valley in 1999. The final 6 minutes were never published. Her colleagues described hearing a child's voice beneath the static. Greaves was institutionalized a year later. After carving the words, "He never stopped humming," into her office wall with her own fingernails. The instruments used during her study were later found to contain traces of black residue, thick and oil-like. Chemical tests proved inconclusive. It did not burn, corrode, or evaporate. When examined under magnification, it moved. In 2007, a documentary team attempted to film a special on Appalachian occult history. They reached the perimeter of the Ashworth property on their second day. Their audio logs, recovered months later from a flooded creek, contained 3 clear sounds: footsteps, shallow breathing, and a low, sustained hum that increased in pitch until the tape ruptured. None of the crew were ever found. Locals no longer speak the family name, but in the nearby town, children are still warned not to wander into the fog after dark. They say you might hear the lullaby, one that doesn't sound sung, but remembered through you. Those who hear it wake with soil beneath their nails and the taste of iron in their mouths. In the county library, there remains one surviving object from the Ashworth estate, a small silver locket, unearthed in 1961 from beneath 10 feet of clay. Inside is a single curl of hair, white though unaged, coiled in a spiral. Etched beneath it, faint but legible, are the words, "The flesh is only the first instrument." When the locket is held to the ear, some claim you can hear it still, the hum. Not loud, not threatening, just steady, eternal, patient. The sound of something waiting beneath the threshold of the world, beneath bone, beneath memory, and those who have listened too long say they begin to understand it. Not as language, but as longing, a slow pulse calling to all who share the blood, however thin. For the Ashworth line was never about a single family, nor a single valley. It was a contagion of lineage, a devotion buried in flesh, still echoing, still expanding. Somewhere, beneath our cities and prayers, beneath our names and bones, the root hums on. And one day, when silence spreads like fog, it will open its mouth again. Because the valley was never dead, it was only dreaming. No one remembers when the first cracks appeared in the ground. The newspapers called it subsidence. The old men at the diner said the valley was just sinking back into itself. But the air began to taste of iron again, and the animals started disappearing from the hills. The forest, once green and heavy with rain, turned still. Leaves did not rot. They simply stopped. Beneath the surface, microphones buried by geologists captured something that should not have existed, not seismic tremors, not gas movement, breathing, rhythmic, wet, and threaded through it, a faint murmur like a voice caught between waking and sleep. The sound was analyzed, slowed, and mapped. It formed a pattern, a name, Ashworth. In 2023, a university team from Lexington arrived to document the phenomenon. They camped at the edge of the old road, unaware that their tents stood over the ruins of the original estate. Their log entries began with optimism and ended in confusion. Day 1, subsurface vibration consistent at 72 BPM. Day 3, frequency now audible without equipment. Day 40, soil beneath camp exudes black moisture. Day 50, Dr. Lynn reports hearing a child humming under her pillow. Day 60, power failure. No stars visible. The final recording is faint, crackled by interference. But one voice can be made out, whispering through the static. We thought the blood ended with them. But it was never theirs. It was ours. The footage ends in darkness. Only the sound remains, the same tone Helena's child once hummed centuries ago. A slow, tender sound, like something trying to remember the shape of its own body. Months later, the research site was reclaimed by the forest. Government reports blamed groundwater contamination, but no further studies were approved. The valley was declared unsafe. Still, hikers who stray too close speak of feeling the ground pulse beneath their feet. Some swear they've seen impressions in the soil, small, barefoot prints circling a single depression, like a child walking around an unseen pool. And in nearby towns, children have begun to hum again. The same melody, passed through generations of silence. None of them know where they learned it. When played backward, the tune forms words in the old Ashworth dialect, a language dead for 200 years. The root remembers. The flesh returns. Scholars debate whether the valley ever existed, whether the Ashworths were myth or metaphor. But folklore is only history that refuses to stay buried. So if you ever find yourself in that mist, and the earth seems to tremble with breath, do not listen too long. Do not answer when the humming stops. Because silence in that place is not absence. It is attention. And somewhere beneath the soil, the dreamer rolls once more beneath the weight of centuries, patient, sleepless, and waiting to be called by name. The blood remembers. The valley dreams. The Ashworths are never gone. End of record. Recovered fragment, 2025. Would you like part 9 to be the recovered letters, final confession, written as an archival transcript found after this? That's how your competitor's channel usually ends the saga. The last document attributed to the Ashworth line was discovered not by historians, but by a demolition crew clearing the foundation of what used to be the county courthouse. Buried beneath cracked stone was a chest, sealed in pitch, its hinges fused by time. Inside were several objects. A silver crucifix blackened with heat, a child's shoe preserved in wax, and a single envelope, addressed only to whoever still hears. The handwriting matched no known record. The ink was faint, almost bled into the paper, but the words survived. To the one who reads this, you will not find our bones where you expect them. The earth has taken them back. Each one placed where the first covenant began. We were told to seek the light, but the light was a mouth. It spoke our names in reverse until we forgot how to answer. They said the blood was cursed, but the truth is worse. The blood is awake. It remembers what it was before flesh learned to walk. Every child born from our line carried a memory older than language. We did not create it. We were only the road it traveled. Helena opened the way. Cornelius crossed it, and what came through wears no name that breath can hold. It lies beneath us still, listening through the roots, whispering to the veins of the world. When you dream of soil and humming, it is not a dream. It is the blood calling home. Do not dig. Do not listen. The valley is only sleeping, and it dreams through those who remember. R.A., last of the line. When archivists unsealed the envelope, a faint vibration ran through the table. The sound equipment in the room began recording without prompt. 30 seconds of inaudible static followed by a single, clear tone, 72 beats per minute. The same pulse recorded beneath the valley. The envelope was placed in containment, but within days, the glass began to fog from the inside. The curator who handled it reported hearing a hum through his teeth whenever he tried to speak. He has not returned to work. The chest is now stored in the state archives under strict conditions. Temperature controlled, sealed, and marked DO, not XAOU. Yet even through the reinforced glass, visitors claim they can still hear something faint, like a lullaby pressed beneath their heartbeat. The same melody Helena once heard in her child's crib. The same hum that never stopped. Because the truth was never about a family, nor a valley, nor a curse. It was about a promise. A covenant written not in words, but in rhythm. The rhythm of the earth remembering itself. And that rhythm continues, beneath every step, beneath every silence. It hums through roots and rivers, through graves and generations, waiting for the flesh to listen once more. The Ashworth line is gone. But the blood is not. It has simply changed its name. End of transmission.